Ethan Cole was 20 years old, living in a cramped apartment in South Boston. The walls were thin, the neighborhood rough, and money was always tight. Yet every morning, Ethan put on a gray janitor's uniform and made his way to the grand halls of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It was a strange twist of fate. The boy from the poor streets now walked daily past some of the brightest students in the world, though he was there only to scrub floors and empty trash cans. Still, his sharp eyes never missed the chalkboards filled with equations. One afternoon, Ethan pushed his mop bucket down the quiet corridor of the mathematics building. On a wide green chalkboard, he noticed a problem written in bold letters. He paused, staring at the complicated symbols. It wasn't just homework. It looked like a challenge. A note scribbled under it caught his eye. Solve this theorem by semester's end and earn a place in MIT's journal. The signature belonged to Dr. Harris, one of the most respected professors at the institute. Ethan smirked. "So this is the game you're playing?" he muttered. That evening, Ethan sat with his friends at a noisy bar. Mark Davis, his closest companion since childhood, was laughing at some joke, but Ethan barely heard him. His mind kept circling back to the chalkboard. Equations tugged at him like an unfinished song. He excused himself halfway through a conversation, leaving his half-drunk beer on the table. "Where you going, man?" Mark called. "Got something to figure out," Ethan replied, already pushing through the door. Back in his shabby apartment, Ethan didn't even bother sitting at the table. He went straight to the bathroom mirror, fog from a dripping pipe. Picking up a marker, he began writing. Every wrong line could be wiped away with a sleeve. Hours passed as he worked through the puzzle. His mind was alive, his hands moving faster than thought. Just before dawn, Ethan leaned back against the cracked wall, staring at the mirror filled with symbols. "Got it," he whispered, a rare smile spreading across his face. On Monday, Ethan returned to MIT. While pushing his mop down the same hallway, he glanced at the chalkboard. Nobody was around. Quickly, he picked up a piece of chalk and copied his solution across the board. His handwriting was hurried but confident. Then, as quietly as he had come, he left, blending back into his janitor's role as though nothing happened. 2 days later, Dr. Harris entered the hallway, intending to update the problem. He stopped cold when his eyes fell on the board. The problem had been solved. Perfectly. He read every line twice, disbelief tightening his chest. "Impossible," he muttered. "None of my students," his voice trailed off. He turned to the empty corridor and asked aloud, "Who did this?" That evening, Ethan sat in the back seat of Mark's old car with 2 other friends. They drove past a group of young men standing near a corner store. One of them shouted something cruel at a passing girl. Ethan's eyes narrowed. He recognized the voice. It was Derek, a bully from his childhood. "Stop the car," Ethan ordered. "What? What?" Mark asked. "Just stop." Before anyone could protest, Ethan jumped out and walked straight toward Derek. "Remember me?" Ethan said coldly. Derek smirked, but before he could answer, Ethan's fist connected with his jaw. Chaos erupted. Both groups clashed, fists flying, shouts echoing in the night. Mark tried to pull Ethan back, yelling, "Let's go, man, the cops are coming." But Ethan was already too deep in the fight. Blue lights flashed, sirens wailed, and moments later, Ethan was shoved into the back of a police car, blood on his lip and defiance in his eyes. The next morning, Dr. Harris walked into a lecture hall filled with curious students. He knew the rumor had spread. Everyone wanted to know who had solved the problem. "Well," he began, pacing slowly, "I see many eager faces, but I doubt you're here for my lecture." Laughter rippled through the hall. "You want to know who the mystery mathematician is?" "Sadly, I don't know either," the students whispered excitedly. Then Harris picked up the chalk and added, "But if that person is listening, here is another problem. One that took my colleagues and me 2 years to solve." He wrote it down, the challenge bigger than before. Meanwhile, Ethan walked out of the police station with a bruised cheek. Mark waited outside. "Court date's in a week," Ethan muttered. "You serious?" Mark asked. "Yeah, they're not letting this one slide." That evening, Ethan went back to work. Another problem sat on the chalkboard. He picked up the chalk and started solving it, his mind racing. But before he could finish, Dr. Harris stepped out of his office. "What are you doing?" he barked. Ethan froze, dropped the chalk, and muttered, "Sorry," before slipping away. Harris walked to the board and gasped. The solution was almost complete and correct. Later that evening, Ethan sat with Mark and the others at the bar. He stared into his drink, silent. Mark nudged him. "What's up with you?" Ethan shrugged. "Got fired." Mark frowned. "Fired? What happened?" Ethan smirked bitterly. "Management said restructuring. Guess they don't need a janitor who likes chalkboards." His friends laughed, thinking he was joking, but Ethan's eyes stayed on the floor. The next day, Dr. Harris was restless. He needed to know who the mystery genius was. He went to the janitor's office and spoke to the staff. "There's a boy who works here. I want his name." The secretary raised an eyebrow. "What's the problem, Professor? Floor's not clean enough." Harris shook his head. No, nothing like that. I just need his name." But the staff hesitated. They thought Harris was going to file a complaint. Only later did he learn that the boy's job wasn't voluntary. It was community service ordered by the court. That same morning, Ethan stood before a judge. The list of charges was long: assault, resisting arrest, and a trail of old offenses. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Ethan defended himself with surprising skill, quoting laws and pointing out loopholes. By the Constitution of the United States, he argued confidently, liberty is a soul's right to breathe. Even the judge raised his eyebrows. But despite Ethan's clever defense, his record was too heavy. The gavel came down. Motion denied. Bail set at $50,000. Sitting in the holding cell, Ethan leaned back against the wall. He heard footsteps. Professor Harris appeared outside the bars. Ethan frowned. "What do you want?" Harris smiled faintly. "Your freedom. On 2 conditions." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "What conditions?" Harris leaned closer. "First, you meet me every week for advanced mathematics. Second, you attend therapy once a week. I'll be responsible for the reports." Ethan scoffed. "Therapy? I don't need therapy." Harris raised a brow. "Then you'll need to get used to prison walls." After a long pause, Ethan muttered, "Fine." A week later, Ethan sat in Harris's office, solving equations with ease. The professor watched him, shaking his head in disbelief. "You make this look like child's play." Ethan smirked. "Maybe it is." But therapy was another story. Harris introduced Ethan to a psychologist. The man proudly showed Ethan a book he'd written. Ethan flipped through it, then said, "I read this last night. Whole thing. Kinda dull." The psychologist turned red. "This is a waste of time. I can't work with him." He stormed out. The next attempt was hypnosis. The therapist leaned forward, speaking softly. "Close your eyes, relax, tell me. Where's he touching you?" Ethan suddenly shouted, "He's touching me down there." The room burst into laughter, except for the horrified therapist. "I'm done," he snapped, slamming his notebook shut. Professor Harris buried his face in his hands. "This boy will drive me insane." That evening, Harris sat in his office thinking hard. Suddenly, a name came to mind: Dr. Raymond, an old friend from his college days. A man who had once been brilliant, but chose a quieter life. Harris picked up the phone. "Raymond, it's Harris. I have someone you need to meet. He's special." Raymond sighed. "I don't take cases anymore." Harris pressed. "This boy is different. He's like Ramanujan, the genius from India who changed mathematics without formal education. You must see him." After a long silence, Raymond agreed. "Fine, bring him." The first session with Dr. Raymond took place in his small, cozy office. Ethan leaned back in the chair, smirking. "So you're the next shrink?" Raymond simply nodded. Ethan's eyes scanned the room and landed on a painting. "That your work? Looks like crap." Raymond stayed calm. Ethan smirked wider, then asked, "So your wife paint too? Or maybe she left you?" The words hit a nerve. Raymond's eyes darkened. He leaned forward and said quietly, "If you ever disrespect my wife again, I'll end you." The room fell silent. "Time's up," Raymond said, standing. After the session, Harris pulled Raymond aside. "You don't have to do this. He's impossible." Raymond shook his head. "No, I'll see him again. Thursday, 4 o'clock. Make sure he's here." Harris blinked. "Are you serious?" Raymond nodded firmly. "Yes, I know his type. He wants to see if I'll break." "I won't." That night, Raymond sat alone in his apartment. He looked at the photo of his late wife on the shelf. Ethan's cruel words echoed in his head. But instead of anger, sadness filled him. He whispered to the photo, "I miss you." Meanwhile, Ethan was across town at a diner with Lily, the girl he had met at the bar. She laughed as he made sarcastic jokes. "You're not like other guys," she said. Ethan shrugged, hiding a rare smile. For the first time in a long while, he felt something shift inside him. The next Thursday, Ethan entered Dr. Raymond's office with his usual smirk. Raymond didn't sit behind his desk this time. Instead, he led Ethan outside. They walked until they reached a park bench under tall oak trees. "We're not doing this inside today," Raymond said. Ethan frowned. "What? You scared I'll insult your furniture?" Raymond ignored the sarcasm. "Sit down." Ethan slouched on the bench. "So, what do you want me to say?" Raymond looked straight at him. "Nothing. I want to say something to you." Raymond's voice was calm but sharp. "You think you're smart because you can quote books and solve problems. But you don't know a thing about life. You've never been to war. You've never watched a man die. You can talk about love, but you've never been truly vulnerable with a woman. You can describe art, but you've never stood in front of a painting and let it move you. You know everything, Ethan, but you don't know anything." Ethan's smirk faded. For the first time, he listened. The following week, Ethan came to the session, but said nothing. He crossed his arms and stared at the wall. Raymond didn't push. He simply sat quietly, reading a book. The silence stretched for an hour. Finally, Raymond closed the book and said, "See you next week." Ethan left, annoyed that his silence hadn't rattled the man. But deep inside, he respected Raymond's patience. By the next session, Ethan broke the silence. He leaned forward with a grin. "You know what, Doc? Heard a dirty joke." He told it, waiting for Raymond to flinch. But instead, Raymond chuckled. "Finally, you said something real," he said. They began to talk, cautiously at first. Ethan mentioned going on a date with Lily. Raymond's eyebrows rose. "So you like her?" Ethan shrugged. "She's perfect, and that's the problem. I don't want to ruin it." "Ruin it?" Raymond asked. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, right now she thinks I'm great. But if I tell her who I really am, where I come from, she'll run." Raymond leaned back. "No, Ethan, that's not about her. That's about you. You're scared to let someone see the real you. Real love isn't about perfection. It's about flaws. The little things you can't stand, but learn to miss when they're gone." Ethan frowned, but didn't argue. For once, the words sank in. That night, Ethan knocked on Lily's dorm door. She looked surprised. "Ethan, I thought you weren't going to call." He rubbed his neck awkwardly. "Yeah, well, change my mind. Want to go out?" She smiled. "Tomorrow." He grinned. "Tomorrow." They went to the dog races the next evening. Lily laughed the whole night, her energy warm and free. "So," she asked, "where'd you grow up?" Ethan smirked. "South Boston. Big family. 12 older brothers." Lily laughed. 12? No way. "Swear to God," Ethan insisted. "Lucky 13 right here." The lie made Lily laugh harder, but inside Ethan felt the sting of his own dishonesty. He promised her he'd introduce her to his family soon, though he knew there was no family waiting. Still, he liked being near her. She made him feel lighter. Later that week, he sat across from Raymond again. "So, Doc," Ethan said, "how do you know your wife was the one?" Raymond smiled softly. "From the first moment. I had tickets to the biggest baseball game of my life, but I saw her in a bar. I gave up the tickets. Never regretted it." Ethan listened quietly. For once, he didn't joke. "You really skipped the game for a girl?" Raymond nodded. "Yeah, and you know what? Best decision I ever made. Real love isn't perfect, Ethan. It's messy, it's hard, but it's worth it." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't used to advice that hit so close to his heart. Meanwhile, Lily grew curious. "When do I get to meet your brothers?" she teased during dinner one evening. Ethan stiffened. "Not yet. They're busy." Lily frowned. "Busy? You keep saying that." He snapped. "What's the rush?" Her eyes softened. "Because I want to know you, the real you." Ethan's chest tightened. He wasn't ready. He changed the subject quickly, but the question lingered in the air. One weekend, Ethan brought Lily to meet Mark and his friends instead. To his surprise, Lily blended right in. She drank beer, laughed at jokes, and even beat Mark in a round of darts. "She's all right," Mark admitted later. But as they walked Lily home, Mark whispered to Ethan, "Careful, man. Once she sees where you really live, she might walk away." Ethan clenched his jaw. He didn't answer, but his mood turned dark. The fear of being abandoned was stronger than his happiness. A few days later, Professor Harris sat across from Dr. Raymond in a diner. Harris stirred his coffee, restless. "So how's he doing? Is the therapy working?" Raymond looked him in the eye. "He's opening up slowly, but I'm not here to force him. He needs time." Harris slammed his hand on the table. "Time? He's wasting his potential. I've already lined up interviews with top companies." Raymond sighed. "You can't decide his life for him. He has to choose." Harris's face hardened. "If he blows this chance, it'll be on your conscience." Meanwhile, Mark made a bold move. Without telling Ethan, he visited one of the companies Harris had arranged to meet. Wearing Ethan's name like a badge, Mark swaggered into the office. "You want the genius? Here I am. But I don't come cheap." The men looked at him in disbelief before escorting him out. "Next time come back with your attorney," one said mockingly. Mark left, laughing, but Ethan was furious when he found out. "Are you insane?" he shouted. "You could have ruined everything." Mark shrugged. "Just looking out for you, buddy." That night, Ethan went to see Lily. They laughed, ate takeout, and for a moment, everything felt normal. Then she looked at him seriously. "Come with me to California. I got into Stanford. I want you there." Ethan froze. "California? No, I can't." She touched his hand. "Why not? You're brilliant. You could do anything there." His voice rose. "You don't get it. I'm not like you. You've got money, a future. Me? I'm nothing." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Don't say that." Ethan stood, shaking his head. "I'm not going." Lily wouldn't give up. "Ethan, I don't care about money. If I could, I'd trade all my inheritance just to have my dad alive again. Don't you see? You're pushing me away because you're scared." Ethan's face twisted. "Scared? You think I'm scared of you? You don't want the truth. You don't want to know I grew up in foster homes, beaten and thrown around. You don't want to know that." Lily reached for him. "I do want to know. I love you." But Ethan's walls slammed shut. "I don't love you," he snapped. Her tears broke the silence. The next day, Ethan stormed into Harris's office. "I'm done with your little interviews. I don't want this life you're forcing on me." Harris jumped up. "You ungrateful brat. Do you realize what people would give for this opportunity?" Ethan shouted back. "I never asked for it. You think because I can solve your problems, I owe you my life? Forget it." He slammed the door, leaving Harris trembling with rage. Harris didn't give up. He arranged for Ethan to meet the National Security Agency. The agents promised a golden future. "You'll be serving your country, son. Big salary, prestige, the works." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "So what? I solve codes, and then bombs drop on kids halfway across the world? I don't want blood on my hands just so you can win wars." The room went silent. One agent muttered, "What a waste." Ethan walked out without looking back. Later, Ethan sat in Raymond's office. "They wanted me to work for the government," Ethan said bitterly. "I told them no." Raymond raised an eyebrow. "Why?" Ethan shrugged. "Didn't want to ruin people's lives. I've seen enough of that." Raymond leaned forward. "Good. At least you're thinking for yourself." Ethan gave a crooked smile. "So, what do you think I should do with my life, Doc?" Raymond shook his head. "Not my choice. You have to decide. Until you stop lying to yourself, you'll never know." For once, Ethan lost his cool. "Why can't you just tell me what to do? You're the therapist, right?" Raymond's voice rose. "Because it's your life, not mine. I can't live it for you." Ethan glared. Then maybe this was all a waste. He stood to leave, but Raymond's voice stopped him. "Where's your soulmate, Ethan?" Ethan spun around. "You want to talk about soulmates? Where's yours?" Raymond's voice cracked. "She's dead." The silence that followed hit Ethan harder than any lecture. Time passed. Ethan grew quieter. One night, he called Lily. Her voice was soft but tired. "I can't keep waiting for you, Ethan. I love you, but I have to go." His throat tightened. "I love you too," he whispered. But by then, she had already hung up. Lily left for California the next morning. Ethan sat alone in his apartment, staring at the empty mirror that once held his solutions. Back at the construction site, Ethan swung a hammer beside Mark. Dust filled the air, sweat dripping from their brows. During break, Mark lit a cigarette. So what's the plan, Ethan? You gonna stay here forever? Ethan shrugged. Maybe. Bricklaying's honest work. Better than being someone's lab rat. Mark's eyes narrowed. Don't give me that crap. You're wasting your gift. Ethan frowned. You serious? Mark nodded. Every day I pray I'll come by your place, knock on your door, and you'll be gone. Because if you're still here, you're throwing your life away. Ethan stared at Mark, stunned. You'd really want me gone? Mark took a long drag on his cigarette, then looked him dead in the eyes. Yeah, because if you're still here in 20 years, drinking cheap beer and laying bricks with me, then I'll know I failed you as a friend. You're better than this, Ethan. Way better. Ethan had no comeback. For once, Mark's words cut straight through his defenses. Meanwhile, Professor Harris grew impatient. He discovered that Ethan had skipped his last few therapy sessions with Raymond. He stormed into Raymond's office. You're ruining him. You're too soft. If he doesn't shape up, he'll go right back to jail, and it'll be your fault. Raymond's eyes flashed with anger. My fault? You don't care about Ethan. You care about your own reputation. He's not a trophy, Harris. He's a person. Harris sneered. You're just jealous of my success. Raymond stood slowly. I know who I am, Harris. I'm not jealous of you, but I won't let you crush this boy. After Harris left, Ethan entered for his session. He noticed the tension in the room. Rough day? He asked. Raymond sighed. Old arguments. He looked at Ethan carefully. You know, you remind me of myself. My father was an alcoholic. He used to beat me. I thought it was my fault, but it wasn't. Ethan tried to laugh it off. Yeah, well, I had it worse. Raymond shook his head firmly. No, Ethan, none of it was your fault. Not then. Not ever. For the first time, Ethan's voice cracked. Don't mess with me, document. Raymond moved closer. Look at me. It's not your fault. Ethan turned away. Stop it, Raymond repeated, softly but firmly. It's not your fault. Ethan's body stiffened. His lips trembled. Don't do this to me. Raymond said it again and again until Ethan's walls collapsed. Tears spilled down his face as he clung to Raymond like a drowning man. The genius who mocked everyone finally broke. In the next session, Ethan walked in with lighter steps. He looked at Raymond and smiled faintly. I took a job offer. Raymond nodded. And how do you feel about it? Ethan shrugged. Happy, I guess. Nervous, too. Raymond leaned back. Good. That means it's real. Ethan looked around the room, then said, You know, Doc, I think you helped me more than anyone else ever has. Raymond smiled. That's what I'm here for. That evening, Ethan celebrated his birthday with Mark and the others. They led him outside, where an old car sat in the driveway. We built it, Mark said proudly. Piece by piece, from scraps. She's yours. Ethan laughed in disbelief. You serious? Mark grinned. Happy birthday, brother. Ethan hugged his friend tightly, grateful in a way words couldn't express. Before long, Professor Harris visited Raymond. They sat in silence for a while, then Harris finally spoke. I was wrong. Raymond chuckled. That's a first. Harris smirked. Maybe, but you were right about Ethan. He needed more than math. He needed someone to see him. Raymond nodded. So what now? Harris raised his glass. Now we drink, like the old days. For the first time in years, they laughed together. The next morning, Mark drove to Ethan's apartment to pick him up for work. He honked, waited, then knocked on the door. No answer. He peered through the window, empty. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. He did it, Mark whispered. He's finally gone. Instead of sadness, he felt joy. His best friend had left the cage later that day. Dr. Raymond walked to his mailbox and found an envelope. It was from Ethan. He opened it and read the handwritten note. Doc, I've got to go see about a girl. Raymond chuckled, shaking his head. Stubborn kid, he murmured, but there was pride in his eyes. Ethan hadn't just chosen freedom. He had chosen love. Ethan's car rolled down the highway, the wind whipping through the open window. Ahead lay California and Lily. Behind him lay South Boston, courtrooms, chalkboards, and broken mirrors. For the first time, he wasn't running from his past. He was running toward his future. His story was no longer about equations or fights. It was about a boy who finally let himself be seen, and a man who chose to live. The drive to California stretched long, But Ethan didn't mind. Every mile felt like shedding an old skin. He thought of Lily's face, the way she laughed, the way her eyes softened when she said she loved him. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a life that wasn't chained to fear. "I'm coming for you," he whispered, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Back in Boston, Mark sat with the others at their usual bar. The chair Ethan once filled stood empty. Mark raised his glass. "To Ethan," he said. "May he never come back." The friends chuckled, but there was pride behind the laughter. They all knew he had been destined for more. Mark leaned back, smiling quietly. Deep down, he knew their lives would never be the same without him. Professor Harris returned to his lecture hall. He looked at the rows of students and the chalkboard filled with problems. But that day, his thoughts wandered to Ethan. "Some geniuses are not born in classrooms," he told the class. "They rise from places you least expect. And if you're lucky enough to meet one, it will change you forever." The students were puzzled, but Harris smiled. For the first time, he felt humbled instead of proud. Dr. Raymond walked through the park where he and Ethan had once sat. He remembered the boys' sarcasm, the jokes, the anger, and finally the tears. He sat on the same bench and looked up at the sky. "You'll be all right, kid," he whispered. For Raymond, helping Ethan had reopened wounds but also brought healing. His wife was still gone, but the emptiness felt a little less heavy now. Ethan stopped at a gas station somewhere in the Midwest. He caught sight of himself in the glass window. For years, he had seen only the boy from South Boston, tough, angry, and guarded. Now he saw something new in his reflection: hope. He smiled at the stranger staring back. "Guess you're not a lost cause after all," he muttered. As the miles ticked away, Ethan replayed Raymond's words in his mind. "It's not your fault." He hadn't believed them at first, but now they felt true. For the first time, he wasn't blaming himself for everything wrong in his life. He wasn't pushing people away out of fear. He was driving towards someone who had seen the cracks in his armor and still wanted to love him. Lily sat in her new dorm at Stanford, books piled high on the desk. She tried to study, but her heart ached. She told herself Ethan wasn't coming. She had cried enough nights to believe it. Then, one evening, she heard the sound of a car horn outside her window. Curious, she peeked out and froze. There he was, leaning against an old car, his crooked grin aimed straight at her. She ran down the stairs, breathless. "Ethan," she cried. He spread his arms wide. "Told you I'd ruin the perfect picture you had of me." She threw herself into his embrace, tears running down her cheeks. "You're late," she whispered. "Better late than never," he replied. For the first time, Ethan didn't run from love. He ran into it. Back in Boston, Raymond received a postcard a few weeks later. It was from California. On the front was a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge. On the back, Ethan's handwriting read, "Thanks for believing in me, document. You were right. Love isn't perfect, but it's real. Tell Harris I'm doing fine." Raymond read it twice, smiling through misty eyes. He tucked the card into his notebook, a quiet reminder of why he had chosen his path. Ethan Cole's journey had begun in the silent halls of MIT, with chalkboards and broken mirrors.